Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic: what's the most unprofessional thing a doctor has ever said to you? I took my mom to see a neurologist as her PCP suspected she had Parkinson's. After waiting almost an hour, the neuro came into the room, took a look, told us she had Parkinson's, then told us to watch some YouTube videos describing what Parkinson's was, then left the room. The whole encounter was under a minute. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with Parkinson's only after she was admitted to the hospital, for a separate issue, a year after her primary called it because the neurologist rejected the primary's diagnosis. My Mill had to wait a year and suffer continued decline until she finally received the inexpensive and very effective meds. Don't know if it's still relevant for your mom, but please, if you have not already looked into it, ask about carbidopa-levodopa. It gave Mill almost a year of normalcy. We went to another neurologist and continued care there. Yes, she is on that med. When I was 21 I dislocated my shoulder and it continued to hurt for weeks. Went to a specialist, he suggested the pain was all in my head. After an MRI he realized I had a slap tear in my shoulder, so I said, looks like it's not all in my head, and he looked at me with such contempt, I never went back to that asshole. Looks like your qualifications might all be in your head, Mr. Doc. Name. Mine, both of them, is related to a dislocation injury, too. When I was 13, I was rollerblading and dislocated my knee. I didn't have a cell phone, I was in a secluded residential neighborhood alone, and it was only like 1:30 on the afternoon on a weekday, early out day from school. So I laid there for a couple of hours until an adult found me and called my grandma. Because I'd been laying there so long, by the time I got to the hospital I was still in a lot of pain, but had pretty much calmed down. My knee had popped immediately back into place, so it was not visibly dislocated. They took my blood pressure, and it was normal. So, between my not crying, my normal BP, and that my knee was only swollen, the doctor refused to do any imaging, told me nothing was wrong with me, and then lectured me about wasting the ER's time. He told me if I had truly suffered that injury, he would be able to see it, I'd be howling in agony, and my pressure would be elevated. I'm sure it was 3 hours before I got to the ER, but you can only cry for so long lol. I kept going to the doctor to have it looked at, though, because it kept hurting. Every 6 months for 2 years I went back because for nothing having happened, I was surely in a lot of pain. The doctor refused to ever do any imaging, just kept telling me there was nothing wrong. At the 1.5-year mark, he told me that I was never getting my hands on the pain pills that I was obviously so desperately sinking, and that he actually recommended I see a mental health therapist for my drug-seeking, attention-seeking behavior, and because my pain was just in my head. Turns out, I have a connective tissue disorder that both makes injuries like mine more common, and also causes me to have low blood pressure, meaning that my normal BP in the ER was actually an elevated one for me. I was 15 when I finally got them to see something was wrong and was referred to Pint. My knee never went back to how it was before the injury, and the Pint told me I could have regained all my strength if I'd pursued Pint right away, and that's confirmed by having dislocated the other knee at 22, entering Pint immediately, and having far fewer problems with the left knee until I dislocated again at 25. You'd think if you were really trying to get meds, and after 18 months of driving to the hoop at the same doctor, you'd just go somewhere else. What was he thinking? Went in because I had a UTI. I was in my 2020s and well aware of what UTIs feel like and when I need treatment. The doctor gave me a long lecture about pill seeking and how the overuse of antibiotics creates superbugs. After I left, I got a call from the nurse, not the doctor, who sheepishly told me that my urine test came back positive for a UTI and that they would send antibiotics to my pharmacy. Wife had a similar situation. She had a rhinoplasty. 3 days after surgery the inside of her nose was just peeling off, swollen, pus coming out. She went in and the doctor basically that's impossible because he's never had an infection in a patient in 20 years and degraded her about it. Lo and behold, test came back positive for staph infection. Yep. Not me, my wife. She went to the drive because she had horrendous pains in her abdomen. Sent her home saying get some ginger ale and crackers, you have the flu. Nope, her appendix had burst but she stayed in bed for a few more days because of his instructions. She hates seeing doctors, wonder why, but I insisted after 3 days that we go to urgent care. I had just started a new job and ended up leaving early to take her in. After being seen at the UC he immediately thought she had burst her appendix and sent us to the ER. We ended up waiting an additional 6 hours in the waiting room, and then she spent the next week in the hospital. Over the next month she was back at the ER 2 times and then the hospital for surgery. After an appendectomy I had a follow-up. Instead of inspecting the incisions on the table like normal, he grabbed my hips and looked down my pants. He said everything looks really good. Especially that bottom one, then winked at me. The bottom one is just above my genitals. Turns out the top two were infected. Something similar happened to me. Doctor was checking my boobs. While checking, he got this huge smile on his face and asked if I have a boyfriend. Felt very uncomfortable after that. Report him. That's sexual harassment and a sackable offense. I'm really surprised by how many people in this thread are describing sexual misconducts and assaults as just shit things you shrug off. ER. Doctor said I was lying about my pain and it was probably gas. I was literally screaming at some points. Tests came back and he rushed in apologizing and finally gave me a demerol shot before prepping for emergency appendectomy. I feel you on that. They thought I was faking until my tests came back. When my appendix was perforated, my parents took me to the doctor. He noted my high white blood cell count and pain, gave me painkillers and sent me home. 3 days later I was in the ER for emergency surgery and an 8-day stay in the hospital. We tried to sue but the lawyer said that since I lived we had no case. Reminds me of what happened to my mom. She went to the hospital for unbearable chest pain. Doctor did blood tests. The test came back with a note saying that it looked like a potential blood clot and he should check for one. He instead sent my mom home and told her to rest. She got called in a panic the next morning telling her she needed to come back in immediately. Turns out she had a pulmonary embolism, and could easily have died that night. Luckily she lived. A doctor once examined me for a genital area irritation. He sent away samples for tests. While waiting a few days for the results to come back, he told me I had herpes. I had been with my wife 10 years at that point. Imagine the next few days where we go off on each other for giving the other one herpes. Imagine the strain that puts on a marriage with all the implications / accusations of being unfaithful, deceitful, etc. The anger, the hurt, the emotional damage, the betrayal. I had a bladder infection. Had a similar experience. Had a yeast infection, but the drive insisted it was gonorrhea. After saying I was in a monogamous relationship, he said in a room with other med staff that it was definitely an STI and looked at me with such patronizing pity. Tests came back 3 days later for a yeast infection and negative for all STIs. Asshole. Oh my god, I had such a similar experience once. I went to one of those fast clinics because I had a UTI. I knew I had a UTI, I'd gotten them before and had all the same symptoms. Nurse asked me if it was possible I had an STI. Now, I grew up only hearing them called standards, so I'm confused and asked what that was. The look the man gave me when I asked for clarification was the most patronizing look I've ever experienced. At that point he clearly thought it was an STI and I was a dumb girl, so I had all those tests run as well. I got prescribed antibiotics to treat a UTI but was instructed to not take them until the lab results came back. Fast forward 3 days and I get a call saying all the STI tests were negative. I asked the lady if I could start taking the antibiotics I was given for the UTI and she was aghast that I'd been instructed to wait. Needless to say, I've never returned to that clinic. I can't even fathom how he could have confused a UTI with herpes. But I can sympathize with you on the sudden confusion and loss of trust. While I was on vacation with my girlfriends, my husband called me in a panic about something he noticed on his dick. I knew I wasn't cheating and it's not his brand to cheat, so I kept calm and told him to see a doctor. His doctor took a quick look and immediately, incorrectly, diagnosed him with herpes, and prescribed medication, all without even mentioning a test. When I got home from the trip, I had my husband drop his pants faster than when we drunkenly stumble home from the bar. I said, give me a minute and put some ice on it. He was confused, but given my medical background, he obliged. I came back with my glasses with a light on them, a scalpel, tweezers, rubbing alcohol, cotton balls, and a cute Batman batted. A quick slice, pick, and pull, and viola. Ingrown hair. An ingrown hair could have ruined our marriage because of a doctor's stupidity. I came back with my glasses with a light on them, a scalpel, tweezers, rubbing alcohol, cotton balls, and a cute Batman badded. A quick slice, pick, and pull, and Viola. That's some trust your husband has. But the badded must have looked weird at that certain spot. Nope, I can't feel any lump. I was convinced I felt a lump in my testicles. The doctor couldn't feel it. Ended up taking way longer than acceptable to get an ultrasound, roughly 6 weeks. And yes, it turned out to be cancer. I'm all good now, but that was BS. Edit due to the attention. Testicular cancer is the most common form of cancer for men aged 20 to 35. It's also the most treatable form of cancer nowadays, so don't panic if you feel a lump. The lump itself felt like a small BB inside my testicle. Hardly noticeable. The consistency was hard and it didn't give at all when pressed. Usually there is no pain accompanied with the tumor. I could feel it when holding my ball between my thumb and forefinger. I should also add I had to insist that I felt something when visiting the doctor, and if I hadn't I don't think I'd have gotten an ultrasound. If you feel something isn't normal, trust yourself. Lol, I had a similar situation. I went to the doctor saying that there's a lump in my neck, that it isn't normal. He felt it and said, I think you just have a big muscle. I wasn't buying it, so I told him maybe to get some blood tests as well. So did some blood tests, came out normal. I wasn't convinced, so I referred myself to a private hospital for specialist's second opinion. He felt my neck, did an ultrasound. Found a tumor, and it was huge, and slowly pressing into my throat. Got a surgery to remove it. Gosh. If I were a lay person I would just believed the first doctor and did nothing about it. Doctor said I didn't need glasses. We came in because I couldn't read the blackboard from my seat at school. Through the eye test, I literally said I have no idea, that one may be an F or an E, and that sort of thing happened for another letter as well. Later on, I got a plastic straw rammed in my eye. Same optometrist said there was no damage. Switched to a new eye doc that worked at the local children's hospital, who confirmed retina damage and that I needed glasses. The old eye doctor is still in business. I don't know if she just had it out for me or is bad at her job.